Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Lynn Rogers and his staff for taking time out of his busy time to get here. He is an exceptional state treasurer. I look forward to being on the ticket next to him, and we will send Lynn and our governor back here in November to continue the good fight on behalf of Kansas. Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you. Well, before we get started, I would like to ask everyone here right now if you would just join me in a quick moment of pause and reflection in honor of our slain American citizens in this town of Buffalo, who died at the hands of someone who was very misguided in their racist rhetoric and took that out in violence. So if you would pause for a moment with me, please. Thank you. And before we do anything else, what you'll learn about me is my deep, abiding love for this country. So if you would, please join me in saying of our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you so much, and thank you for coming out today. We have a beautiful day. My name is Jeanna Repass, and I'm running to be the Secretary of State of the state of Kansas. I'm so honored today as we celebrate the anniversary of the historic Supreme Court decision in Brown versus the Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas. Obviously, we stand in the shadow of this wonderful mural. But I want you to know that I'm entering the race because we need to protect the right to vote of every legally registered Kansan. They have a right to cast their ballot and to have those votes counted. When I am Secretary of State, I will restore the confidence in our right to vote by making sure there is access to the ballot for every legally registered Kansas citizen. The very foundation of our democracy is the right to vote. Voting is the vehicle by which the government of the people, by the people, and for the people is realized. Nothing, and hear me now, nothing is more fundamentally American than the right to vote. Voting is not a partisan tactic that should be used to divide us. As Americans, our right to vote, it should be our most proud moment. It should be what unites us. Here's a great part of Kansas. As Kansans, our history is grounded, rooted in fighting to protect our right to vote. When invaders, marauders from across the state line in Missouri crossed into the Kansas territory, trying to intimidate the vote, trying to manipulate the vote to make sure that Kansas became a state that continued to enslave people, Kansans said no. They stood up to violence. They stood up to intimidation, and not even the burning down of Lawrence could stop the people of Kansas from voting. And ladies and gentlemen, on January 29, 1861, Kansas entered the United States as a free state. That is the power of voting. So as we mark this anniversary today of the Supreme Court ruling in Brown versus the Board of Education, we remind ourselves what it was that Oliver Brown was fighting for. He was fighting for the right of his daughters to go to the public school that was closest to their home. Of course, it was an all-white school, and his daughters were being forced to go all the way across town to attend an all-black school. Even after the Supreme Court of the United States struck down separate but equal, there were states and municipalities all over this country that found obstacles and excuses for reasons not to implement the law. They found obstacles and excuses to make sure that they could refuse access to equal education in integrated schools to Americans. Well, our current Secretary of State, Scott Schwab, has refused for 3 years to implement a bill that would allow Kansans to vote at any polling place in their home county. To be clear, this was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. 38-1 in our Senate, 119-3 in our House. Think about that. The will of the people of Kansas is that this law be executed. It's been 3 years of obstacles and excuses. Is it standard practice now, as it was in 1959, to use obstacles and excuses to skirt the laws of Kansas? I would say no. Well, let's talk about Mr. Schwab, because before he became Secretary of State, he served as Chris Kobach's legislative co-conspirator in pushing through voter suppression laws. As chair of the House Elections Committee, Schwab ushered through Kobach's unconstitutional bills, ultimately costing the citizens of Kansas millions and millions of dollars, and it canceled the rights of voters, over 30,000 votes. Okay, so Schwab's now backing further bills that would limit our access to vote. It's time to take the office of Secretary of State back to the people. It no longer needs to be a politicized office. It belongs to the people of Kansas to protect our right to vote. Well, my mother was a civil rights activist and a pastor. My father is a Vietnam veteran who has spent his entire post-military career in law enforcement. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the rule of law of this country. My love of this country and my sense of duty to actively participate in our democratic process was instilled in me by them. They made sure that my brothers and I understood that our right to vote was paid for by countless numbers of people who came before us, many of whom were never able to fully live into their rights as American citizens, many of whom died without having the right to vote. I stand on their shoulders today. Okay, so as Secretary of State, let me tell you something. I will be a fierce advocate for your right to vote, Kansans. I will never allow anyone with political aspirations, anyone with gamesmanship, to influence this office. I will be a fierce advocate for you. That is my promise to you. So here's what I love about being a Kansan. From resisting the violence of people trying to invade us in 1861, to being on the front lines of advocacy in 1959, Kansas has always stood up for the right of the people of Kansas to make their vote the will of the state. That will never, ever cease to be the case. And I promise you, I will fight and protect your right to have access to your vote as a Kansan and as an American citizen. Now, if you feel the way that I do, I'm going to ask you to join me. Please go to repassforkansas.com. Please lend your voice, lend your money, lend your support, because we have a fight on our hands. But as we've already discussed, Kansans are not afraid of a fight, and we will take it all the way to the win in November. I am Jeanna Repass, and I'm running to be the Secretary of State of the state of Kansas.